Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Think and Grow Society webinar, Friday, May 16, 2014. I want to welcome you to this presentation, and tonight's lesson is a very, very important one. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites, I have to say, because it makes such common sense that it's amazing to me how quickly this concept that we're going to talk about tonight goes over people's heads. So we're going to talk about the habit of doing more than paid for, the habit of doing more than you are paid for. This is the lesson 9 in Dr. Hill's 9th lesson in the Law of 16 lessons. And I think it's a very appropriate lesson to take up tonight because I believe that in the context of building a business or building value in who you are as an employee or building value in who you are in any aspect of your life, that understanding the habit of doing more than you're paid for is probably the single most important thing that you can do if it's a matter of advancing yourself, especially economically. And unfortunately, it's one of the first things that we refuse to do. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of us that don't like the idea of doing something that isn't for compensation. We are such an immediate gratification society that we refuse to do things just because it's an investment in the future. It's an investment in ourselves. It is something that may pay a dividend later, but the dues have to be paid today. It's amazing how many times we will look past an opportunity because it requires something of us today that doesn't immediately result in a return on the investment. It's very short-sighted when you think about it, that we approach life where we're not motivated to do something unless we get something back right away. Now, I can tell you that that is the way 99% of people think. But if you look at the truly successful people in whatever endeavor you may seek to study, you will find that they understand this concept of the habit of doing more than you're paid for. You'll see them not only embracing it, but mastering it and making it unconsciously competent of them to do. Or they've developed it to the point where it's just a natural part of who they are to find ways to add value where they don't immediately expect for someone to compensate them. I want to, and you may have noticed, for those of you that have been around with me, that many of the lessons that I share involve personal anecdotes, personal experiences from my own life. And the reason for that, of course, is that those are the ones that I understood the best. Those are the ones that had the greatest impact on me. So I'm sharing with you where these things have shown up for me in hopes of getting you to look for where they should or could be showing up for you as well. So let me give you an example. Dr. Hill talked in this paragraph about how important, or in this lesson, about how important it is to do more than you're paid for so that you can be paid more in the future. And on its face, it seems like a pretty simple concept, which is why it's so interesting to see how many people don't embrace it. But I can tell you that some of this I did personally from a very early point in my time. I didn't understand it at the time, but I did know that I was doing the right thing and doing more than I was paid for. And I'm going to show you through different stages in my career where that has benefited me. And hopefully that will inspire you if you're not already doing this. I have a feeling I'm preaching to the choir tonight, but to the extent that you might seek inspiration or gain inspiration from some of the things I'm going to share with you, I'm going to give you some examples of where you have the opportunity every day to do more than you're paid for, and not have it be a major burden to you either. Back when I was a teen, I think I was probably about 15 or 16 years old, I had a job at the YMCA folding towels in the locker room. And I may have mentioned this before in another context, but that event had so many offshoots from it in terms of lessons learned and opportunities created that it's easy for me to refer back to that frequently. So as a 16-year-old folding towels in the locker room at the YMCA, I have a vivid memory of some of my friends laughing at me because I was sitting behind a desk folding towels, running back and forth to the washing machines and the dryers and folding towels and handing them out to health club members. And they were all running upstairs to the gym to play basketball. Now, there were times when I did things in the health club that I wasn't required to do, but it just made sense to do them. Sometimes it was somebody else's job, and I knew that they might be gone for the evening, so maybe I would empty the garbage or I would do something else that wasn't really part of my so-called job description, and we're going to get to that concept in a minute. I did it because it made sense to do it. Excuse me, my microphone is a little close to the face there. And the reason that that became important is because people around me, health club members, because they knew all the staff and what their roles were within the health club, when they would see me do something that wasn't part of my job description, it caught their attention. And it caught their attention in a very good way. And they recognized, without even telling me, that they saw that I was doing more than what was required of me. They saw that I was doing more than what people expected of me. And that started to bring me to their attention in a way where they were looking for ways to acknowledge me. And they often did that around holiday time through tips. Other times of the year, they would do just little special things. I used to get a chance to talk with them more. They wanted to engage with the people who weren't just going through the motions in the job, the people who really were enjoying the job and taking it seriously and giving everything they had. But one day, it turned into a real, tangible result. The one day that it did that for me was when one of the judges, or one of the health club members who was a judge, actually pulled me aside when he heard that I wanted to go to law school. And he sat me down and he talked with me about what going to law school would involve. And then he connected me with a state senator in the state of New Jersey who he arranged for me to have an appointment with, and who ultimately ended up writing me a letter of recommendation to get into law school. And that all originated with the fact that I had come to his attention in a positive way, and he felt that I was worthy of a little extra effort on his part to put me in a position to get into law school. Now, I may have gotten into law school with or without that recommendation letter, but he was going to make sure that he did his part to participate in helping me do something that was important to me because of the things that I had done in the health club. The truth is that there was very little there was very little I could have done. I'm sorry, how do I want to say this? There was very little that this gentleman wouldn't have done for me if I had asked. But what he volunteered to do without any solicitation from me was wonderful. And if I had gone to him and said, hey, listen, I need a favor, or could you help me with this or that, the other thing, I know that the other members of that health club would have done that for me because of the way that I went about my business in the health club. Now, I was only 16 years old back then. I didn't understand the law of attraction. I didn't understand the law of success. All I know is that that made sense to me to do the best I could at what I was doing. And when you position yourself to just do the best that you can whatever you're doing, whether you enjoy it or not, you come to the attention of people in a positive way. And that creates opportunities for you. I'll give you another example. I remember going to, I can't remember what the store was, but I remember going to a store, and there was a clerk that was especially attentive. I had my law firm back then. And she was being very, very diligent about her job. She was taking the job seriously, even though it was just a ministerial, mindless, do the same thing every day of the week. Nobody would have noticed if she was just going through the motions, because frankly the entire staff was going through the motions, but she had a little bit more of a spark to her. She was very engaging with the customers. She was genuinely interested in them. And ultimately, after coming into contact with her a few times when I visited that store, actually it was a what do you call it, a pharmacy, a CVS pharmacy. After going to that pharmacy frequently enough to get to know her, I ended up offering her a job to come and work at my law firm. And she was one of the best staff people that I had ever had, but she was so happy to get out of that job at CVS and to know that she came to my attention because somebody recognized that she was worthy of more than what she was doing at the CVS store. Now, she could have gone through the motions. She could have continued to do what was expected of her rather than what she expected of herself, and I may never have noticed her. But she virtually doubled her income by coming to work for the law firm and basically was doing about the same type of work. It wasn't anything much more demanding. It was just a better environment. But I needed someone who was going to take very good care of my clients, because on those occasions when I wasn't there to answer the phone or to be in the office or to pull a file or to do something that the client might need, I needed to know that my staff people were going to take that as seriously as I did. And I felt that she would be good at that because I watched how she dealt with customers. Now, most minimum wage or entry-level job or even management-level people, they're just focused on getting through the day. How many times do you hear people talk about, that's not my job, I don't get paid to do that, that's above my pay grade, or some other indication that they're resisting doing any more than what's expected of them? It's not very inspiring when you think about it. You go up to customer service and they give you all the reasons why they can't do something because it's somebody else's job, or that you got to talk to so-and-so, that he's responsible for that. That's not my responsibility. That's not very inspiring. But if you went into a store where someone took it upon themselves to do something even though it wasn't their responsibility to do it, you really felt better about that person. You felt like you had a new best friend. You felt like you wanted to do something for them. If nothing else, you would give them a great recommendation or tell their supervisor what a great job they were doing. So that all starts with being willing to do more than what you're paid for. The truth is, some people barely do what they're paid for, but the point is, if you want to distinguish yourself from the crowd, learning how to do more than what you're paid for is what positions you for opportunity. I had another situation when I was a kid. It was about the same time frame where I saw in the newspaper, actually my mother saw a job in the newspaper where a local apartment complex was looking for someone to run the incinerator on weekends. There was an apartment manager who was off on the weekends, and he was looking for someone to run the incinerator on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I applied for the job and got the job, and yeah, it wasn't a glamorous job at all, but I was dependable, and I got the job done, and there were things that I wasn't required to do that he started seeing me taking responsibility for, and ultimately there was a lifeguarding position that opened up, and because of the relationship I had with him, he was aware that I was a lifeguard, and he asked me if I would be interested in taking the lifeguard position, which I did. Now, there's a lot of people that wouldn't have applied for that job because it wasn't exciting, it wasn't sexy, it was just a way to make some money. But I took the job seriously enough that I came to attention of someone in authority who was in a position to give me a better position because I was there and trusted to do a good job. So again, I positioned myself to be available when the opportunity presented itself. Another example that came in college, and again, I don't remember. I share some of these stories periodically, and some of them are relevant to different areas, but I don't remember if I told you the one about the Nautilus Fitness Center. This is one of my favorites, actually. When I was in college, I was an athlete, trained seriously in strength training, weight training, had been trained on the Nautilus Fitness Center fitness system back then, and was actually qualified to be an instructor because I was a real student of the equipment and was knowledgeable and kept myself up to speed on it. So there was a Nautilus Fitness Center in my home in the town where I went to college, University of Pittsburgh, and I went in to apply for a job as an instructor in there. And at the time that I applied, the manager of the facility told me there were no instructor positions open. But he was kind of cynical or skeptical about whether I knew what I was doing. Nautilus was very new. So most of the instructors that he had on board had no experience at Nautilus, so he knew he'd had to train them. So when I came in and told him I had already been trained, I knew how to maintain the machines and how to help people work out. I had been to DeLand, Florida, where they make the machines and had been trained on premise for that, all that kind of stuff. He was very cynical, and in fact, almost to the point of being, kind of arrogant about it, But his arrogance actually showed through when he immediately told me after there were no health instructor position, or I'm sorry, fitness instructor positions, but we do have a janitor position. And I think that when he first said that, he meant it to be offensive. But I sat and thought for a minute. I said, well, I'll take that position. And as it turned out, I did take the position. I used to come in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings after hours, 11 o'clock at night when the facility closed, to clean up the entire facility, scrubbing the showers and the whirlpool and all that kind of stuff, toilets, everything. And believe me, it was a mess. But the point was, I took that job because I knew that eventually I would have an opportunity to become an instructor. The job also came with the right to work out for free, which was another reason I was applying to be an instructor, so I could get a membership and not have to pay. So one day I came in to work out, and as it turns out, one of the instructors was out sick. And this guy's name was Rusty. Rusty came up to me and he's like, hey, what are you doing here? And I told him I was coming in to work out. And he said, well, listen, I'm short an instructor, so here's your chance, Mr. Nautilus, to show me what you can do. And he was sitting by his desk, and he threw a T-shirt at me, one of the instructor T-shirts, and he said, get out there on the floor and see what you can do. And I went out on the floor, and I worked the full shift, working with the members, helping them to set the machines and to work out and spotting them and all that kind of stuff. And then about 2 days later, I came back in after my shift. I was there, I think, to work out again. And in the process of working out, Rusty came up to me, and he said, listen, I want to talk with you about possibly having you become a full-time instructor. Or not a full-time instructor, officially becoming an instructor, because he knew I was part-time, going to school full-time, working part-time. And I asked him, well, who left? And he said, well, nobody left, but everyone wanted to know where the new guy was after your shift was over, because I had done such a good job of working with them. Now, if I hadn't taken that seriously, if I just looked at that one shift as being a one-and-done scenario and gone through the motions, I wouldn't have inspired people to want me to come back. If I hadn't taken the janitorial position, I wouldn't have even been around when that position presented itself. So all of that happened because I was willing to do more than paid for. Now, these are very, very simple examples, but the truth is that in life, most of these things are going to be simple things. It's not some catastrophic thing. You didn't save the world. It's just that you did something simple and consistent. Did it something simple consistently enough that it came to the attention of other people. So let me give you an example of some of the ways that you can do that if you're employed. You know, for most of the employees that you work with, that by 4:50, they're sitting at their desk, basically winding down, packing things up, waiting for 5 o'clock to roll around. And if you notice, the elevators are always packed right at 5 o'clock. Everyone is out of there the minute the whistle blows. Now, if all you did as an employee were to be around after the whistle blew, maybe you're just cleaning up the kitchen in the office before you head home for the evening. Or maybe you come in a few minutes early to do whatever. The more you're around and in the company of some of the supervisory staff that might be there, the more you're going to come to their attention as not being someone that's quick to rush out the door right at 5 p.m. If you have the opportunity to come in and catch up on work on a weekend periodically, if they see that done consistently, they realize that you're not just doing the bare minimum. See, a lot of us, we want to make more money when it's time for us to get a review and get a raise, and we think that it's enough that we were on our best behavior meaning doing what was expected of you. The truth is your employer will pay you more when you do more than's expected of you. Most of us have the attitude that, well, if you'd give me a raise, I'd work harder. The employer is on the other side of the desk saying, if you'd work harder, I'd give you a raise. So it becomes, who's going to move first? Well, if you're the one that wants the raise, in my opinion, it makes sense for you to be the one to work harder so that the employer would then justify giving you the raise. Otherwise, you're basically asking them to have faith in you that, you could perform better if you made more money. My point to you in saying that is that we gloss over these things so easily these days. Everyone's talking about how to distinguish yourself from the so-called competition. The best way for you to distinguish yourself from the competition is to do what the competition won't do, which is to do more than you're paid for without expecting an immediate return, to be patient, to trust that by doing the right thing consistently, that it will lead to bigger opportunities because you will come to the attention of others in a positive way. See, the main reason people won't do that is because they're not convinced it will yield a result, especially not an immediate result. So I want you to think about maturing yourself past the idea that before you'll be willing to work harder, someone's got to be willing to pay you more. It's really not hard to get your head around that, because we're not even suggesting that you do extraordinary things. We're suggesting you do little things. I saw a receptionist move from being a receptionist to an executive secretary, which almost doubled her income just by taking on the extra responsibility to clean the dishes for the coffee cups from visitors during the course of the day. It wasn't something that she was asked to do, it was something she just did. So the point I'm trying to make to you is that if you put yourself in a position to come to the attention of someone because you've been doing more than what's expected of you, you will always have opportunities that come your way. And that, I think, was Dr. Hill's message in this lesson, the habit of doing more than paid for. Now, there are many other examples that I have of this. I'm not going to go through every one. I think you get the point. But if you consciously seek out ways for yourself in whatever environment you find yourself, find ways to do more than what's expected of you. I can't tell you what those things are, but you can figure them out. So this would be something I would recommend that you record in your journal. If you're still doing your journal, write down right now the things you're going to do to practice the habit of doing more than paid for. What things can you do at work? What things can you do for a neighbor? What things can you do for somebody that would implement the concept or the habit, allow you to develop the habit of doing more than you're paid for? And let me know what those things are. I'd be really interested to see what you come up with, because obviously they can be relatively unique to you. And if they are unique to you, then of course, you can distinguish yourself even further depending on what your environment is. So I hope that you'll take the habit of doing more than paid for seriously, because there really is a lot of opportunity. That's what reveals opportunity. People want to work with people who don't have to be told what to do. It's a leadership principle, not just a success principle. It's a leadership principle. And if you'd like to be in a position of leadership, the best way for you to come to someone's attention is when you are practicing leadership by doing more than what you're paid for. All right, well, that's going to wrap the lesson up for our purposes tonight. Again, it's a relatively simple concept. We don't need to beat the horse to death. Suffice to say that if you will commit to make this a regular part of who you are and what you do, develop the ability to become unconsciously competent at this. In other words, just make it something that's part of who you are. Make something that's automatic for you. Make it part of who you are. And I promise you that every time you step out into the public arena, you will automatically find ways to draw attention to yourself in a positive way, because people see you doing things that other people wouldn't. And they don't have to be extraordinary things. They just have to be more than what people expect of you. See, success is about doing what's expected and just a little bit more. It's that little bit more that catches people's attention. So I hope that makes sense to you. It certainly is a simple principle, from my perspective. And all you have to do now is to make that part of your regular routine to the point that it becomes habit for you. Once it becomes habit, you will be able to count that as one other thing that you're unconsciously competent at, and that will benefit you in anything that you do. All right, so I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Next week's lesson is pleasing personality. That's also one that's somewhat related to the habit of doing more than paid for. It's also one that some of the people I've come across with that benefited from the habit of doing more than paid for, they also tended to have a pleasing personality. And this is one I know is a success principle that is universal in nature, because I've seen it in so many different authors, so many different noted authors have talked about having a pleasing personality, that when it becomes self-evident because you see everyone talking about it, you know that that's a success principle. So take that one seriously. It's not a hard one to understand, but it's one to appreciate the true value of, because you may or may not be showing that in your daily routine. But if you make it a point to make it a habit, make it part of who you are, to have a pleasing personality, you'll find that that'll pay big dividends as well. But we'll talk about that next week. I want to thank you for joining us on Friday night for the Think and Grow Society webinar. And if you have not already done so, please go over to abundantsociety.net, abundantsociety.net, and set up a personal profile so we can continue the conversation in there. You may also want to start inviting some of your colleagues, your friends, your classmates, your coworkers, and your family members who have an interest in investing in themselves. We're about to do some extraordinary things together, and I'd love to see you invite the people that matter most to you to be part of it. Look forward to seeing you next week. Remember, 8 p.m. Friday evening, that'll be Lesson 10, Pleasing Personality. Have a great day, everybody.